Didiza.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngobo. Deputy Ministers Mcebisho Skwacha and Stumo Dlamini in Cape Town, Acting Director General Masori in absentia, Mr. Terry Ndobe, who's the DDG for Land Reform, senior managers present, members of the media, good afternoon. A month ago, we met to appraise the nation on matters relating to land reform, in particular, the announcement made by President Ramaphosa in his first State of the Nation immediately after assuming office. President Ramaphosa affirmed government's commitment to accelerate our land redistribution program, not only to redress a grave historical injustice, but also to bring more producers into the sector and to make more land available for cultivation. As we all may appreciate, land forms an important economic base for agricultural development, industrialization, and human settlement. Land reform, therefore, plays a critical role in enabling those who have been historically disadvantaged to have an asset that can give them a foothold in economic participation. The process of land reform will also ensure social cohesion and inclusion amongst our society. Government has in supporting the new entrants into the agricultural economy. We're also encouraged by expression of interest and support from a number of organizations who are willing to partner with government to make a success of those who have received land from government, either organizations who are willing to partner with government to make a success of those who have received land from government, either through restitution of land rights or land redistribution. As part of the economic recovery plan tabled by the president, agriculture is one of those sectors of the economy that is poised to contribute positively in job creation, food security, and economic growth, particularly as we strengthen our market access for African agricultural products globally. In order to achieve improved economic growth, as seen in the first and second quarter, we need to ensure that an enabling environment is created for the sector to succeed. Policy and regulatory environment will require certainty in order to eliminate negative perception from would-be investors in this sector. Agricultural infrastructure, particularly for irrigation, remains critical, in particular in new areas that offer new opportunities for inclusive growth. We have noted in the past week that a majority of farmers have been impacted negatively by the veld fires that have affected some regions in the Free State and Northern Cape. Sadly, these two provinces have been affected by drought in the past years, while Northern Cape continues to experience the drought presently. With governments of the two provinces for the speedy reaction in assessing the damage and give immediate relief while looking at the long-term assistance. We also thank farmer organizations for partnering with the provincial governments in providing fodder and other forms of support to those who are affected. We are also aware that when such natural disasters occur, farm workers are hard hit. We hope such relief will also address the humanitarian needs of all. We're pleased that the expropriation bill has finally been tabled in Parliament. This important bill will ensure alignment with the Constitution, as well as creating clear framework on how expropriation for public purpose and public interest will be undertaken. It is most important that we all need to familiarize ourselves with this legislation and make inputs to the parliamentary process as lawmakers craft the legislation that will become part of our legal framework. On the 1st of October 2020, we gave an update on the state land that has been released as part of the 700,000 hectares announced by President Ramaphosa in his State of the Nation address in February 2020. In the same press briefing, we announced that government will be advertising 529,000 hectares amounting to 894 farms across the country for release on the 15th of October 2020. The advert was to run for a month, ending on the 16th of November 2020. I must say that though Western Cape and Gauteng is not one of those provinces that have got state land that is available for release, we will continue to ensure that the needs of those producers in these provinces also do find support from some of the programs of government in terms of land redistribution. During the announcement, we indicated that the state land in question comprised of land that is currently occupied by individuals and communities who are residing in state land without any form of paper, either be they lease agreements or even tenure security that confirms that this land belongs to those communities. Some of them are communities who have been working in this land and have not received any formal recognition in terms of whether they've got the right to continue use this land and can actually utilize it for agricultural development. We indicated then that a land inquiry process will be undertaken to ascertain the status of such occupation and how such lands were given to these communities or individuals. This process will ensure that proper procedure for formalization and regularization is undertaken. This is a way of enabling the state to have a record of which farm is occupied by who and what activities are being undertaken in that particular state-owned land. Also, questions have been raised about the land in question by various individuals in the academic sector and political parties included. The land in question that we have spoken about refers to the land that the then government, prior to 1994, earmarked for the consolidation of homelands and was then held by the South African Development Trust. In some of these lands, farmers were allocated hectares of land in different sizes depending on the agricultural viability on the land. Some of these lands, like Makhathini Flats, were managed by Umjindi Management Company. Some lands were then used by communities for grazing, though no formal consolidation had been done. I must say that, in a sense, this is a legacy of our past as a country where some of these processes were left unfinished. After 1994, an attempt was made to transfer some of these farmlands to farmers. Unfortunately, this process was not concluded. In order to address the land rights of these various communities, a land rights inquiry is critical. And I just want to say here, these lands refer also to one case that has been very topical in our country, such as the Ragasa matter, who actually took government to court because, in his view, rightly so, felt that his tenure security was not confirmed by government after having used this land for so many years. The advertisement of properties, including those that have communities, is to ensure that there is transparency and that government is able to address the legal issues that are necessary to confirm the rights from a process that was left hanging. For instance, you have got certain farms where they were abandoned and there were farm dwellers and farm workers, and other people came into those lands and nothing was actually done to ensure that their security is clearly defined. So we're trying to deal with all of those issues. And in our view, it's an important process of land reform to ensure that we affirm those rights to the individuals concerned. Following this press briefing and the advert that had been made, we've received online applications amounting to about 5,838, which include cooperatives and also individual farmers. A number of physical applications have also been received and will be consolidated after the closing date as we speak. There are many people who are still approaching our offices to actually deliver their applications. The land rights inquiry has commenced, and a number of farm dwellers, farmers, and communities have been met by our officials. The process will continue until such time that all state-owned land has been recorded and accounted for. There have been allegations made publicly about government officials who have written letters of evictions to individuals and communities on state land. In some instances, there have been allegations of officials demanding bribes of hundreds of thousands of rands to access such land. This conduct is unacceptable and criminal. We have advised our communities to bring these issues to the office of the Acting Director General for attention and to the nearest police station. It is important to emphasize that the main purpose of this process of land verification is not to destabilize farmers who have been farming and producing in farms in the past, but to put in place a state land administration and management system that ensures security of land tenure, stability, and provide an opportunity for sustainable food security and economic growth. This will also enable government to develop and implement targeted and sustainable support to small, emerging, and commercial farmers into active participants in the economic market. We therefore urge all South Africans to seize this opportunity and submit their applications online or at our provincial offices, given that we are nearing the closing date. But we also hope that this process will ensure that those who might have had concerns, their concerns have now been attended to, so that they know that the land verification process and the advertisement of the farms in questions where there might be communities does not seek to remove those people, but is to actually confirm their rights on that land. We will continue to communicate on the screening, assessment, and approval process that will follow towards finalization of this process. And I hope that we'll walk this journey with you as the media community, so that at any given time, our communities can appreciate how far we're going, what are the challenges, if any, but also what are the opportunities that actually are there that remain that can be addressed by our various communities. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be ready to take questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. Colleagues, here we go. Let's start with the questions from the floor here before we go to WhatsApp. SABC.
Thank you so much, Minister. Open testimony of SABC News. I'd like to find out the duration of the land rights inquiry, and during that period, what will be happening to those farm dwellers, those that stay in the farms that you say you don't know their status. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Any other question? Let's go to the WhatsApp. Ignition.
Thanks, Richard. There's no questions at the moment.
Okay, Minister, can you take that one for me?
Thank you very much for that question. We actually see this process as an ongoing process. It has already started. So already we know in been having with them. And in our view, these are the communities who we will prioritize in terms of the approval process and the confirmation of their land rights.
Ignatius, do you have any?
No questions.
It seems, Minister, it was clear. Any other question from the floor? Yes, Perry.
Good afternoon, Minister. Barry Bateman from ENCA. Perhaps you're looking at the number, you said there have been 5,838 applications. And are you encouraged by this number? I mean, it does seem like quite a lot of people coming forward in the short period of time since the announcement. Are you able to say anything more about the type of people that are applying? Are these people that are on the land already? You briefly mentioned, I think, the companies and various individuals. But can you tell us a little bit more about the kinds of people that have come forward? And in terms of the application process, I think you discussed it at the previous briefing. What are the requirements for an individual or a company to apply for this particular land? Thank you.
Thanks. Before Minister, there's another one from Luyolo from Business Life. How far is the land right inquiry process regarding the Guachu farms issue in the Eastern Cape? Thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much. I will start with the question on the floor. What are the types of applicants that we are having? And what requirements do those need to have? I must say that the applicants that we're receiving are those people who, some of them are farming on communal areas in small pieces of land. As you know, that the competition for both grazing and cropping in communal areas is actually one of the challenges. So those are some of the people that we're getting, but also some of them are young people who would like to enter into the agricultural space. Some of them, in the majority, and I must say, it's women who actually have either been having farm gardens in the common age areas or even in the back gardens, who would like to actually have access to more land and expand. So they actually comprise a number of, or rather, to land of their own. So it's a multiplicity. Some of them are people, as I said, who either were on what was known previously under the Department of Agriculture in the early 90s were called Fala land. Those who were actually given that land by the South African Development Trust at the time, but they've never had any form of tenure or rather confirming of leases thereafter. I mean, processes were left hanging, they continued to farm, but they never had paper. So it's those types of applications that we are receiving. The question that has been asked by Business Live, I'm not sure that it's the same gentleman who raised the question yesterday, but the process of land inquiry in Guaju is actually almost complete and will be made available because it was an inquiry process arising out of the parliamentary process, which was raised about the status. And I think it's important for me to give a little bit of history on the Guaju farms in the Eastern Cape. These were farms that were actually bought by the then South African government for consolidation of the Transkei. Some of them, until 94, they were still farmed by the farmers, commercial farmers at the time, who then left, those farms with labor tenants, but some of them were already allocated to certain individuals by the then Transkei government for farming purposes. So you have got a multiplicity of tenure, rights that are there. So you've got on one hand your former farm workers, your former farm labor or labor tenants, as we'll call them. Some of them were actually new farmers that were coming in. You also had in the same area the Chachu community who had also applied for restitution over the Chachu farms. And from the commission side, that application of restitution never actually met the criteria. You have had community members who are there who formed themselves into a structure. They call themselves CPA, even though in terms of the CPA legislation, they are not actually registered as a CPA, but they are a structure that is representative of certain individuals who also have a claim on that land and they would want the land to be transferred to them. So what necessitated the land inquiry was this multiplicity of interests that have been expressed by various people who all of them were having one form or other of a claim on the same pieces of land that are there, which are still state land. So that land inquiry had actually, been undertaken by government to establish who and what forms of land rights each of those communities have and find the best way of how we resolve that. And I hope that will assist the Business Day journalist.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Minister. Thanks, Perry. Ignatius, can you take the ones from WhatsApp?
Thanks, Reggie. I have a student from Business Library. The land rights process will continue until such time that all state-owned land has been recorded and accounted. Can I ask, is the government uncertain how much land is in state hands? And I have Sipo Mabeno from the Citizen. Are there cases of alleged bribery against government officials that have been brought forward that the minister is aware of? Will the department look into allegations that farmers who have been running successful establishments for decades have also received eviction letters? And also, in some cases, the farmers who have received eviction letters knew who would take over their farms, despite the fact that the process was still open. I have another question from Carol Payton from Business Day. Some of these people are destitute and are not farming. Will they be assisted to acquire farming inputs? And secondly, the main vehicle to acquire land as a community is to form a CPA. But these CPAs split and many are dysfunctional. What is your solution to this problem, which is creeping land reform? And I have another question from.
Minister, can you answer those and then you take the rest first? Seems there are many.
I'll just have to stand and wait for. Yeah. Thank you very much. With regards to the issue of the land query, which we raised early, yes, we will indeed continue to make an assessment where the issues of land are concerned in terms of how much of that is state land, who has it, what was the form of receiving that state land. And remember that also state land refers to the land that is managed by public works, which has been given to different departments for use. And in certain instances, and I'll make one case where we received a phone call, for instance, from one of the farmers around Kwamhlanga area, who actually said, I have been managing this land. It used to be used for a college of police and it was left unattended. So we quickly, after having received that information, spoke to the Minister of Public Works on the case in question, which was then attended to. So there are certain instances where you'd find that there may be pockets of state land which is now completely encumbered, and maybe nobody knows exactly whether this was state land or not state land. And I think this process and talking about it is enabling us to know, okay, so this is state land and it has been either a village or in certain instances, invaded by people who are either farming on that one. So that land inquiry process is a necessary part of land administration, if I may call it that way. Whether we've received allegations that some of our officials are extorting money from people for this process. We have had a question in Parliament as part of the follow-up question last week, for instance, where such a matter was raised. And formally, with the department, we haven't had any receipt of such. But we did indicate that if somebody has information to this effect, and that's why I've mentioned it in my statement even today, that where such allegations can be brought to us in terms of who is the official, which office, in which province, we will be able to deal with those because, as you know, President has been very emphatic about issues of corruption. And also the advisory panel on land reform, this is one of the matters that they had been raised as allegations that have been coming up where issues of corruption were indicated upon. So it's important that we deal with those so that such officials are actually brought to book. The last question is, will government be able to assist some of these people who will receive state land, as Peyton was saying, that some of them are destitute, and therefore how will government assist them? Yes, we will. As we had in terms of our COVID-19 intervention, but also different provincial departments through the Fetsahlala Ilima program and the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program are doing it. One of the things we have said is that everybody who get access to land going forward, we will make sure that those people accept to subject themselves to training. We will make sure that those people actually are full-time, not cell phone farmers that only go to see their farms and they think the land looks beautiful, do nothing about it. So we want people who are actually going to work the land productively. So our support is important as government to give a kickstart to those people in order for them to succeed. Now I'm waiting for
There's one on CPAs.
or the other one on CPAs. It's not a given that all land holdings by government where people want to acquire land are forced into a CPA. No, that's not true. Where you have had, a legal entity as community property association, that's where people have received the land as a collective. And you remember that in 1994, some people opted for trusts as a form of entity to hold the land in question. Others later, when government created the legal instrument as part of the Communal Property Association, that legislation enabled people to acquire that land as a group and manage it, and then appoint an executive that will actually, on a yearly basis, report back to communities about how they are utilizing this land, and if their development needs, decide as a community how they deal with it. On their constitution, depending either 3 years or 5 years, they will then go for an annual general meeting that will be an elective conference for a new CPA. But as a new executive. But in most instances, there have been problems where either communities differ on the use of land or partnership in instances and collapse in terms of relationship. Sometimes other executives live longer and don't call annual meetings to report back to communities. Some of them actually, the communities come and request that we put them under administration because they are no more dealing with the issues of land on the interest of the communities. So these are the difficulties that we've been working on in respect of the CPAs particularly. But it is not the form that government will say we prescribe for anybody who wants to acquire land. I mean, there's a lot of individuals that are using state land where lease for 30 years have been given to individuals or to companies.
Okay. I have a question, Minister, from Maina Matsemela from Zanzi Agriculture Talk.
Yeah.
Minister, now that it's public knowledge that some of the farms advertised are currently being occupied, and taking into consideration the fact that some occupants have already turned the farms into their homes, how will the government treat applications from such farmers, more especially the ones that fail dismally in production, regardless of several government interventions? Will the department be approving their applications regardless, and why? If not, has the department thought of a plan to house them elsewhere, since some might have nowhere to go? I have another question. Secondly, what will be the criteria used in judging new applicants against the ones that have been occupying farms and producing? Will preference be given to the ones that are already occupying, or will the strength of new applicants' business plans be considered? Thanks, Minister.
Well, thank you very much from Umzansi. I'm not historical background that he's given on that question. A majority of the farms that we're talking about, some of them have been underutilized and empty. Others have had farmers who have been farming, as I've indicated, what was called SADT or fallow land before. Some of them, villages are using it as communal grazing land. So the land inquiry process will ascertain in each and every case. And as we've said, This process does not seek to evict people, but rather is to regularize the processes where people were actually given land, no follow up in terms of, you know, confirmation whether this land is. And as I've said, that a lot of this land was bought by the then government prior 1994 for consolidation of homelands. And you know that there was fierce opposition by a majority of South Africans against the homeland system. So some of those farms were never transferred to those consolidated homelands, as it were. They remained in the custodian of the South African Development Trust, which used that land by giving allocations to farmers, some of them at 10 hectares, others even more hectares for them to farm. After 1994, as I indicated in my statement, government, through the Department of Agriculture at that time, particularly on Fala land, tried to actually start the process of ensuring that those farmers who have been there in those lands for many years should be assisted to formalize and be able to get security of tenure. But that process was interrupted and never finished. So in our process of analysis, and as this land inquiry, we would look at each circumstance and see how best we support. For instance, you can't uproot somebody who's already farming productively on that land. And that is why we said those people with good business plan who qualify, but who may not be able to qualify on this particular property because there are farmers who are already farming. Through our proactive land acquisition farms, we will be able to assist those people. So that
There's a follow-up.
from Zanzi.
No, there's a follow-up on WhatsApp, Minister.
Thanks, Minister. There's a follow-up questions from Ed Stoddard from Business Maverick. He's saying, does the department have the capacity now to screen these applications in a timely and transparent manner? There have been administrative challenges in the past which have hampered the land reform process.
Yes, we do. And we've also mobilized other stakeholders to ensure that the process is not doubted, is actually transparent. We've actually, even before the advertisement, we engaged a number of stakeholders, farmers organization, non-government organization in the land and agricultural space. We've also spoken to faith-based organization, UN Women who have been working with a number of women's organizations, SAWID, as well as the Food and Agriculture Organization. And we've done that because we do need this capacity of individuals who would work with us in ensuring that the process is credible, is transparent, and everybody can actually feel that the matters was attended to. Secondly, so that indeed there is quality assurance in the processes that we undertake.
Let's take you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Lazarus from Critical Media. Minister, on the application forms, these farms, they don't state which farming is good for. I can have a good business plan in applying for this land. For crop farming, when I apply, I will find this land is good for livestock farming. Because you can't even go and visit that farm to see, well, it has a borehole, it has water, or it's good for crop farming. That's where the challenge is. I can apply, well, I'm a livestock farmer, where else you're going to give me the crop farm. So I think that's where the challenge will be.
Yes, I agree that that may be the challenge in terms of whether the land in question that an individual applies for is for grazing or for crop farming. Obviously, in the engagement with the various individual applications and with the people concerned, if the farm in question is not suitable for the needs of that farmer, that communication and engagement with the farmer concerned will be actually undertaken to advise the farmer that this land in question is for agriculture. But in most instances, what we've found is that a majority of people who have done applications to this land are people who are coming from the communities nearby who actually know what suitability that land is for. But we will address it. Unless there's a specific farm that you know that you're interested in.
Yes, I've tried to go and see, but
Yes.
I was told that I can't go in and see unless if I will be shortlisted to come and view the farm.
Well, any property is a private property. If there was somebody in the farm, I think it would have been important for you to engage with the farmer concerned to say, as you know, this land is available and would want to see what it is for. Or if there's nobody on that land, it's vacant piece of land, talk to our government officials who could take you to the farm if you'd want to see and assess it. I don't think that is a difficult or should be a difficulty actually.
Okay. You have something, Mara?
Well, thank you very much. We will continue, as I said, that this is just but one press briefing. We will continue to appraise all of you about this process as we are going forward. Thank you very much once again.